That's okay. Well, welcome. It's great to see you all. Hey, I have been so excited and amazed that all of you have been so excited to hear about the summer learnings and the sabbatical journey. And now, even more so, to see that all of you feel this is more important than the Seahawks. Now I'm over the top. Now I'm over the top. I mean, I've got the game recording too. We lost power? No. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. All right, so let's say a prayer and then we'll pick up where we left off. And I really do hope that we're going to have more time for questions this session today. So let's pray. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Gracious and loving God, thank you for our mutual ministry together. Thank you for the amazing privilege of getting to be one of the pastors at Silverdale Lutheran, for these amazing people and this amazing congregation. God, thank you for the gift of the experience this summer, and thank you that you're guiding and helping us all to learn together from it. So be with us with your Holy Spirit again today. Be with us in our conversation. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. So where we picked up, or where we left off, we finished my time in Germany. I shared with you the little tidbit that Martin Luther King Sr. on the left went to Wittenberg when Martin Luther King Jr. was 4 or 5 years old and came back and changed their names to Martin Luther Sr. and Jr. After Sr. went to Wittenberg and did exactly what I did. And that was a cool learning for you guys, and for me as well. Did I tell you when I told my girls and Alex, so we went out to dinner, and it was like, I said, okay, here's the lad, and I'd taken them all through the museum at different times, and said, here's my last little tidbit, and I told them that story, and they were like, oh, to be in Wittenberg, anyway. So we also made some mistakes last week. We have lots of educated people here some have been to Wittenberg, and Ethel May was great because she actually brought me a written explanation of this painting. And so I actually made 2 mistakes, and I've got to have it on record because I can't propagate things that perhaps are not true. But nonetheless, so I said, of course, this is Luther with the cup on the right, and I said this was Peter, like giving him the cup. That was one explanation I did here, but probably the standard one is that this is not Peter, that this is Cranach the Younger. Remember I talked about Cranach, the elder, as the right-hand media person of Luther, did all those woodcuts, all the paintings. But Cranach the Younger was also an amazing artist, and so most people feel that that's Cranach the Younger, but the question is Luther being given the cup, or is he giving it? Is he receiving it or giving it? Now, one thing that you need to know that was a part of worship reform in Luther's day is that in Luther's time, the church only gave people the body of Christ. The bread. They did not, or the wafer, they did not receive the wine. And so one of the things Luther did, and this doesn't seem to us to be a big radical thing, but one of the most radical things, as far as practical changes, was that Luther felt like you should receive in both kinds. And so, because of Luther, the evangelical churches, as they were known in Luther's day, began to receive the cup as well. And so maybe this is Luther giving the cup to the church and the congregation. But I just wanted you to be aware of that. That was just one thing I may have messed up, although I don't know that we know definitively for sure. Where I totally messed up is not really in concept. The picture and what it means is the same. But this is not Martin Luther. As somebody, when we start doing our classes on the Reformation, this is a gentleman, his last name is, losing the battery. I don't know if there's an extra one or not. Randy's got it. So I'll just talk loud. That's fine. That's fine. I'll just talk loud. That's Deb. That's dead too. Did you know you can test them that way? If they give you a jolt, that's fine. Sorry, it's these old sound system times. So I'll just talk loud. We're fine until Randy gets me the battery. So this guy's name is Bugenhagen, and he was Luther's pastor. That's the best way I can describe it. He was Luther's confessor, especially in the later part of his life after his mentor Staupitz kind of drifted away. Anyway, we'll go into that whole story later on in our class. But this is Bugenhagen, and of course he's got the key on the repentant man's head, which is forgiveness, but he's got it on the back of the rich nobleman who's not repentant, who's still bound in his sin. But anyway, this is, I think it's Johannes Bugenhagen, and he was very instrumental in taking the Reformation north into, I don't know if it was Sweden. I don't want to say another wrong thing, but I think it was Sweden, anyway, so Bugenhagen is a hugely important figure. Thank you, Randy. So what you've got here on the altarpiece is Philip Melanchthon doing the baptism on the, if you're looking at the altarpiece on the left, then you've got the Lord's Supper in the middle with Luther, and then you've got Bugenhagen on the right. Three central figures in the Reformation. So I just had to fix that because that's definitely Bugenhagen, not Luther. Even though he kind of looks like Luther, right? Anyway, so same kind of hat. That's right. All right. So that's just corrections from last week. Oh, okay, let's move on from here. We did this, and so we're going to leave Wittenberg. I talked about my learnings from being there, the appreciation, the gift that the Reformation is. I talked about the challenge of, being in Europe, and I'll talk some more about that now with England, where, 5%, 10% actually claim to be Christian. It's certainly way higher than that in the United States. I think it's still over 50%. But the nuns, of course, the people that claim nothing, is growing. We saw that in the latest Pew polls and other things. But, so will the U.S. go that way? I don't know. And then I just talked about how can we passionately, joyfully celebrate the Reformation, but yet be ecumenical. And that's something that Luther struggled with, and Melanchthon struggled with, and we've been struggling with now for 500 years, and I think we're making some great strides. I think that's the way you spell curate, is that correct? Does it need 2 R's? I don't know, it looks like it needs, but it's okay, It would tell me, wouldn't it, if it was not. So, somebody said to me, Pastor Bill, I really appreciate you're like a scholar, and I'm really not. When you look at scholars, either biblical or Lutheran history. But what I got me thinking that what I want to do with what I experienced in Wittenberg is be a curator. There's all this stuff that Luther wrote. I mean, it's amazing. And what I think my calling is to curate all of that and bring you something you can digest and you can grab onto in your everyday life. You don't have time to read, 100 volumes. And I think that's maybe what I really love to do, is be a curator of theology and the Bible and the faith and bring you, resources. So I can't wait to do our class on the history of the Reformation. And we'll be starting that probably in the spring and going on in the fall of 2017 as it's the 500th anniversary. So we're ready to move on to England, Ireland, but was there any questions that we didn't get to from last week as far as Germany, Wittenberg, Luther, what I presented there? You may not remember them and you can bring them up later today, but if there's any that you had that we didn't get to last week, you're like, oh, I wanted to ask him that. Okay? All right, so let's move to England. Oh, isn't that awesome? So what did we do in England? We had fun. we did a lot of really fun things, kind of touristy things, and took a ride. I think I might have thrown a picture in. Well, this is one of the funnest things we did. The musical Beautiful. If you ever come to Seattle or you get a chance, you don't want to miss it. It's the story of Carole King. Great Motown music.
This month.
Is it this month?
Yes.
You gotta go.
Where?
Where is it?
Paramount.
Fifth Avenue?
No.
Paramount. Okay. Well, we might be going again. It was that good. So that was a real highlight to see that. Yeah. So we did lots of fun things. We took the riverboat ride and had tea and saw Big Ben and toured around London. So we had lots of fun. We did go to evening prayer in St. Paul's Cathedral, and that was beautiful and amazing. And I realized, boy, they did not make those cathedrals for the preaching of the Word. I could barely understand. I mean, even with the microphone system, the echoing, it was like, wow. But the singing, amazing. And actually, we were there for the anniversary of the Battle of the Somme, which was a big deal, and so they were having a special celebration for that. So we had fun in England, and then we went north to Sheffield. I was on the plane, I was on the plane, I was talking to the gal next to me, and she was a businesswoman who was in Germany going back to England. So we were on a flight from, what was it? Frankfurt? Or no, it was from Berlin. Thank you, Anne. From Berlin, and we were flying into London. And so she was a business person, and Brexit had just passed. We got there the day after, I think. So that was all the talk. I mean, believe me, and I was actually refreshed that we were talking about their politics and not ours. Everybody wanted to know about, what's going on. So I was talking to her, and she actually was for Brexit, but anyway, I won't go into that subject. But she said, "What are you doing in England?" I said, "We're doing London," and she understood that and everything. And then I said, "Then we're going up to Sheffield," and she said, "Why are you going to Sheffield? People usually don't come here to go to Sheffield." It's basically an industrial town with a big university. And so I told her I was going to see and visit a church there that's really growing and a lot of exciting things happening. And so she said, "Oh, that's interesting." And then we went on. But anyway, so this is the interior of the church in Sheffield. Let me tell you a little bit why we visited there and what we learned and experienced. So my good friend from when I was younger, actually, Kevin Murphy, who's a pastor down in Walnut Creek area, and a very large congregation there. Kevin was pretty influential in my earlier years. I haven't kept real close touch with him, but he takes his whole staff to Sheffield, England for an event they have every year. He takes his whole staff, and they have a big staff, because it's so inspiring and interesting. And so Sheffield has literally 5% of the people in Sheffield are Christian. And there's this university there, and this church is filled with 20-year-olds. 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds. In fact, didn't we meet a couple on Sunday morning, and they were from the United States, and now he's teaching in the university, right? I forget his name. But they quickly identified us as Americans, and so they were the perfect couple. But one thing I learned is there was someone there after the service that knew who we were and knew them and put us together. Who used to do that here at this church? Darlene Britt. Before that, Happy Scott. And now we try and do it as a group, but that's a powerful thing. So we had a long conversation. It was great. In fact, he was preaching, I think, the next week. So that was really interesting and fun. But this church is doing amazing ministry, growing in a very unchurched area, and so I wanted to see and just experience a little bit of what they're doing. I can tell you that Sandy and the girls had a really powerful worship experience. This church is Anglican, Church of England, and Baptist combo. You're going, wait, that's impossible, right? So when we were there, there was a young family that had a little baby that was doing a dedication like you do in the Baptist church. So they have their lead pastor, Mick, who's Church of England, and then they have two pastors kind of below him. They're kind of hierarchical in this particular congregation. Mick is the big picture guy, and then they have other people that are the rubber meets the road folks. And they have an Anglican pastor and a Baptist pastor. So if you want to have a dedication for your child, the Baptist pastor will receive. If you want to have a baptism, like in the Anglican church, then the Anglican person. And they do this together. Same church. They have multitude of worship services, of course, and so that was interesting. So it was a beautiful, you can see altar area, pipe organ, although we didn't hear that. There was a worship band that was off to the side. Notice the off the side thing. And all the other kind of praise band type services I went to in this county while I was on sabbatical, they're right there the whole way. There's nothing you see other than the band. That's the focus. In this church, it was kind of a neat hybrid. They had a little bit of a liturgy, a little bit more than what some of the typical kind of, what would you call them, evangelical churches here in the States would have. But it was just a really beautiful worship experience. Pastor actually talked about Brexit, talked about politics, but he didn't take sides, but it was really interesting how he did that, and that was interesting to me and learning. I also learned, like, we typically put evangelicals today into more of the Republican world, right? Well, and then the mainline denominations like ours tend to be a little bit more, or a lot more Democrat side. That wasn't true there. It was really, because they're kind of evangelical, but they were like really more on the progressive side of politics, I guess. So that was fun, you know, because you put things together in your own context, and they were completely out of that. I didn't mean to go into that. So basically, then the next day after worship, well, that same day, let's see, we got to go out. Sorry? Oh, this was a picture from morning prayer. In fact, let me just talk about that now. So the next morning, I went and sat in on their entire staff meetings and how they operate. They begin, first thing, I think it was 8 o'clock with morning prayer. They have morning prayer. That's an Anglican thing. They do that every morning, the entire staff. And congregational members come for morning prayer. Now, it wasn't your typical Anglican morning prayer. It was more guitar and praise songs. But they worship and pray for like 45 minutes together every day. I was like, well, maybe we could try this once a week. Then they have a time together where they talk about where they see God at work, each one, and things they're thankful for, each one. Then, another hour later, they get together at a big staff and they talk about, this is what I was doing last week to meet my goals, and this is what I'm going to be doing this week to meet my goals, and so they have accountability. And so they do that. So that's another thing I've been thinking about. Then we went to a coffee place and did smaller team work. I think it was about a 5-hour event. They do this every weekend, or every weekday on Mondays. So that, I was thinking sometimes, man, we spend too much time in staff meetings. Not now. I mean, it just shows the importance of that contact, prayer, study, having faith conversations. And so that's one thing I got. So that's why the chairs are turned around, because this was set up for morning prayer. Going back just a little bit into Sunday afternoon, we had a lovely kind of wonderful dinner with a family of the church. And they took us for a wonderful little drive out in the countryside. Sheffield is the place where you see in the movies that classic English countryside. That's the place everybody goes to do those movies. And so we got to go outside, see the sheep and the little fence there and the beautiful hills. And so, oh, I thought I had a picture of, I don't know what happened to the picture of the family. Oh. Anyway, this lovely family, we talked about, it was just, we spent like 2-3 hours. They made a wonderful Sunday roast, and we had lovely conversation, and it was really great and interesting. They had lots of questions about college and how it works in the States, and we asked them, and it sounded like college was free for them. So I was excited about that, and they told me their tax rate is 40%. And I said, well, there is no such thing as a free lunch, right? You have to pay one way or the other. So anyway, so we had a lovely conversation about Brexit, faith, and church, and it was a great time in Sheffield. So I learned a lot from Sheffield about how we work, and the thing I want to say is they have a passion. They use the term love Sheffield. They have a passion that they are going to love the city of Sheffield, and they have an absolute goal to witness and bring people to Christ. You'll hear about this when we get to Ethiopia next week. We're not going to make it today. Yes.
How does the hybrid church work with the Queen as the head of the Anglican Church?
Yeah, it's tension and it's interesting. Mick, the senior pastor, was very... Did you hear Kevin's question? He asked, how does it work with the Queen of England being the head of the church kind of thing? I guess that's
Head of
true.
the Anglican
Head
side.
of the Anglican Church, and how does that work? And there's a little tension there. Mick works a lot, the senior pastor, with the Church of England. And because they're growing so much, the Church of England is like, what are you doing, you know? So he was fairly frustrated the day I visited with what was going on in the hierarchy and what they were trying to do. But I will tell you that he had great respect for the, what do you call the head of the Church of England? The religious head.
Archbishop of Canterbury.
Archbishop, yeah. And I'm forgetting his name, I got his face. But he said that the Church of England is in such trouble that they have come up with like $100 and some million for a big push to try and revitalize the church, because basically, as they look at the next 10 years, they almost won't exist in 10 years if they don't do something. So, that really was sobering and interesting. So, but yeah, so that they have a passion to share Christ and bring people to Christ. That's maybe the little Baptist-y part of it. But they also have they minister to the whole person. And again, when we get to Ethiopia, you'll hear more about that. So it's a beautiful holding together of evangelical and social work. Or social work maybe is not the right thing, but caring for the whole person, physical needs. You know, there's all kinds of problems, and then they're particularly focused on the struggles of university folks, and so that was, when I think about what do you need to do, well, you need to do both, and so that was a great experience, and I loved it. Any other questions? That was a great question, Kevin. Any other questions about Sheffield? Yes, please.
Give us a few more specifics. What are they doing in their community that's attractive?
They are out there feeding, doing all kinds of feeding programs. They offer counseling for young people in particular. They have a ton of stuff for marriages, which I was excited to see that we're doing some of that here now. And in fact, they use the Alpha program. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is a program that comes out of England, comes out of the UK, that's focused specifically for the unchurched. And basically, the long story short, you get a group of congregational members to go through the program. Then you, in fact, Don McCracken has been a leader in Alpha in his prior congregation. And he's not here, I can't tell him, okay, let's get it going here. Anyway, but you can tell him, Pastor Bill mentioned you. By the way, thanks for doing Alpha here. Don't. But anyway, so then you create a situation where people come, though that core group makes dinner for them once a week, and then you show a DVD, and you have conversation. That group becomes mentors for those new folks. And it's specifically for congregational members to invite people who know nothing about the faith. And thanks for that question, because one of the things I come back kind of wrestling with is we expect a lot from people to enter this congregation. And I don't say that as a criticism. We got a liturgy. I don't say we should change that. But the average person who knows nothing comes into our service. They're lost. They're like, what is going on? So we're working on trying to have some materials and a resource to help people along with that. But Alpha's, and then I have my basics class, but in truth, this is really for people who once were Christian and then left the church or haven't been going, or they're coming from somewhere else. I typically am not dealing with people that are completely unchurched. Sometimes, but it's, again, a big step to ask. So that's another thing that they do, the Alpha program. Those are some things that come to mind. So, yeah. Yeah, Lisa.
How big is this church?
I knew you were going to ask me that. They are worshiping between all their services. I don't know, I didn't ask in exact, but I'm pretty sure it's with the number of services they do and the sanctuary that I saw, it's definitely, like 600 to 700 a Sunday type of thing. And in that context, and it's mostly 20-year-olds, that's a pretty big deal. Great question. Any other questions on Sheffield?
Are all their services in the same format?
Are all their services in the same format? I'm pretty sure they are. Yep. And their format is more of the worship band kind of music. But the thing, I think Sandy is, I think she had to head out, but that we appreciated is how much the congregation participated. I mean, in a lot of the churches I went here, which were very moving, wonderful congregations, but I looked around and it's basically people are listening to a concert. Some of them are singing, and some of them, you know, they're raising their hands and they're there. And I'm not saying they're not worshiping, but at this church, they didn't darken the lights, for instance, the house lights. I mean, it was brighter. I actually had to work with the lighting on this so the cross didn't blur everything out. But so, I mean, it was daylight. You could see everybody, and they were singing. I mean, I was like, that was really powerful how engaged they were. So, but I'm pretty sure that they don't have like the traditional and. But I'm not sure I know that for sure. Yeah.
So what did they do about communion? Did they have communion?
They do have communion, and I don't know. Why didn't I ask that question? I don't know if.
The reason I ask is Dan and I have gone to a combined Lutheran Catholic church
Yes.
in Oregon.
Yes.
And this was very interesting
Dave, come on up.
because
Hold on, Joyce.
What
Hold your thought. I just want everybody to hear you. So Joyce is saying that they've gone to a joint Catholic Lutheran service. Yeah.
Okay, we have attended a Lutheran Catholic church.
Mm-hmm.
They had two pastors, a priest and a lady for the Lutheran side.
Yeah.
And so they worship the whole time together. However, when it comes to communion, the Lutherans will go to the fellowship hall and have it there.
Yeah.
Catholics stay there. Then the next week they switch.
Wow.
And so there's still that thing.
That divide, absolutely.
Yeah.
Joyce, I so appreciate you sharing that. I should have asked him that question. I was all focused in on how do you work your staff.
Well,
How do you do that?
I don't know if
I didn't even
there's
think about that. But I know they do have communion, but I don't know if they do it together or not.
Well,
It's a great
I
question.
don't know what the difference would be between the Anglicans and
Oh,
the Baptists.
Traditionally, there'd be a huge difference there. Same difference Lutheran and Baptist here, that typically the Baptists don't see it as a sacrament.
Once a year.
Well, around here, actually, the Baptist or the non-denominational churches are starting to have communion often.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a change that's going
Yeah,
on.
it's a change.
But they still are very clear this is a representative thing.
I
This
grew
is,
up non-denominational, and we had communion every
yeah, so
single week.
some churches
It was
do.
weird to go to the Lutheran church where they didn't have it every week.
Didn't have it every week. Yeah, but a lot of Baptist churches that I know about it just depends. So there's a lot of variety. Don't tend to have communion a ton, but nonetheless, they have it frequently, and I'll have to ask that question, see how they handle that. Let me say this: that from the Roman Catholic side, the chief ecumenical officer in the Vatican recently said, and I don't want to quote because I don't remember the exact, but he looks forward to the day when Lutherans and Catholics can commune at the same altar. Yeah. So that's rather interesting. Yes.
So I grew up in the Baptist church.
Okay.
And
Hand the mic. Yep. There we go.
maybe you can hear me.
We probably can. But
That's right back there.
that's all right.
Anyway, I grew up in the Baptist church, and when we had communion, we passed it out. They passed a tray down the
Yes.
aisles with a cup.
Yep.
And they passed it down with the bread, and everybody took the cup and
Yes.
cup and the bread at the same time.
Yes.
And I just wondered, maybe they made it, if it's part Baptist church, maybe they did that.
Yeah. I don't know. And the reason the Baptist Church does that is they believe the significance. One of the significances is the unity that we have in the supper, which is cool that everybody communes together. But they also don't believe that Jesus is present. So it's not a problem, just pass it around.
And they don't serve wine.
And they don't serve wine, which is really problematic.
They serve the fruit of the vine.
All right, so we can spend a lot of time on the communion part. Please, other questions? Yes? Baptism is different. They do blessings for Baptists and baptism like we would understand in the Anglican, and each pastor does it for those families.
And then,
So.
but then immersion for that.
Immersion.
Good question.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it would be.
The choice.
Yeah, I'm assuming it would be, yeah. So, anyway, it was it's a fascinating experience. We love being in Sheffield. We love the countryside. We have a great experience there, and I definitely saw how another church does something, and I've been wrestling with what can we bring back from that. Chris?
So do they worship together because
Yes.
of the declining, membership in churches, or is it an older tradition than that?
You know, it's enough. You guys, no, let's move on to Ireland. I actually, Chris, thought about this. How did this come about? How did this come about? And I don't remember how that worked. But I'm going to find these questions out before next week. Yes.
That's my question. Do you have an email or a contact?
Oh yes.
Someone there?
Oh yes. I will find out. I will find out. How do you handle communion, and what's the history of how this came about? And I definitely need to find that out. Greg?
I would just say, watch the video, comment on it if you have a question, and then Pastor Bill can reply.
True.
And then all of us, all of us
can
can
do
see the
that
question.
too. You can do that too. Go online with the video. That, by the way, let's thank Greg for getting these classes. Yes. So you can make a comment on there. I can answer it, and we can go at it that way too. But I will find those questions out. All right. No, other questions about Sheffield. You're going, why should we bother? He doesn't know. No, go ahead.
This is just a tip.
Yes.
Tell them your job depends on it.
Yes, right. I'll say, I've got like 100 people who need to know these questions. Actually, probably we'll call my friend Kevin, who's been going there for every year, and see if he can tell me too. So yeah, very good. All right, good. Well, let's get on the plane and let's travel to Dublin. And this kind of came about because Dublin, or was it Air Canada, that had great flights out of Dublin. If you ever need to go to Europe, that's a great way to go. It's very good, best price. So we went to Dublin, and of course, you see a lot of the Celtic influence. We have an expert right here, Kevin McNamara. So if we have any questions about what I'm saying, Kevin is here. But you see this beautiful artwork, and in this particular cross, there's never ending, ineffable, eternal, in some of the artwork. And so I just thought I'd put that cross there to start things off. This is just a replica, and I bought this cross, and I want to start wearing this one. But this is the oldest of the great Irish high crosses, 7th century A.D. The original is like 10 feet high. I didn't get to see that, but this is a replica of it. And of course, St. Patrick's great blessing, Christ be with me, Christ be behind me, Christ be before me, Christ be within me. I love that.
You're not going to wear the 10-foot one, right?
No, I'm not going to wear the 10-foot. So here you see, what do you see in this design?
Face.
Yes, down below. Oh, you kind of do see a face here. Yeah, interesting. What else do you see? In the top, the Trinity. I think that's one of the best symbols of the Trinity. So you see there's three, it's not circles, but imagine those are circles. You're used to the circle one. These are more not triangles, but the kind of football shape. And so, sorry, bad metaphor. So you see that symbols, you see that symbol, but also they are all connected and never ending. The bottom part of the cross has Jesus there, and then surrounded by the 4 evangelists of the 4 Gospels, and then faithful pilgrims, faithful followers down here below. I just thought that was a really cool cross. One of the things we did in addition to, well, I'll talk about those in a minute, was go to the Book of Kells. Anybody ever seen the Book of Kells or got to go? What a treat that is, isn't it? So the Book of Kells, what's that?
We didn't go inside, we just on the outside of the building.
Yes, outside the Holy Trinity College. If you ever get a chance to go, it's definitely one, if you go back to Dublin or go again, you don't want to miss that. So the Book of Kells, it's hard to know when this book, which includes the 4 Gospels, I don't know if it includes Acts or not, but I'm not an expert on the Book of Kells, but we got to go, and it dates to approximately 800 AD. And it's this, the Bible illustrated in the most beautiful way you've probably ever seen. And so most modern, when Becca, my youngest daughter, took calligraphy from Joyce Berry and Herb's, Werner, sorry, not Berry, daughter at CK, she knows all about the Book of Kells because this is like the model for calligraphy. You can't take pictures there, but this is this is just off the internet because they were like, you cannot take pictures. I was like with my camera there. I want to take a picture. So, but look at how beautiful the calligraphy is. It's translated from the Vulgate, which is the Latin Bible. The story on the Book of Kells, and they call it Book of Kells because it was hidden out in the monastery Kells, because where it was done, they were afraid the Vikings were coming in and destroying and pillaging everything, and so they hid it out in the monastery. It's considered Ireland's greatest national treasure. This is the beginning. This is Christ, the triumphant Christ pictured. And then this is the beginning of the Gospel of John. You just look at this and you go, how did these people treasure the Bible? Did they know the power of the Word? That they went to such reverence to present the Scriptures? I was just really blown away by it. This is the library in Holy Trinity College. And those are all ancient books. It's just quite spectacular to see. Well, sorry. Kevin, please tell us more. Yeah. Can we get a mic to Kevin there? Great. Yep. Thank you.
There's a British law that every book published, one copy goes to the Trinity Library.
Ah, there you go.
Library of Congress.
It is absolutely amazing. If you go there first thing in the morning. The lines are small. But that's something everybody likes to go to. Good. Any other questions about the Book of Kells? I just wanted to bring that to you, and I just so appreciated the presentation of the Scriptures. My family was like dragging me, like, okay, you gotta go, you gotta go. All right, so yes, we did other things. We went to a few traditional pubs, and I never got my guitar there at the night time when I could play along with the great singing. And we had a little other things we did there with Jameson. We visited Jameson there a little bit, had a little cocktail. So that was cool. So after just having fun in Dublin one day, the first day, and we did the bus tour thing. It was great fun. We said, we want to get out of the city. And so we decided it was either going to the Cliffs of Moher, I think that's what you said. Yeah. But that was an all-day event. And so, no, we don't want to do that all day. So we decided there's a Malahide, I believe is the way you say, this castle. There's a little bus tour out to this. It was the longest inhabited castle, or it was the oldest one that was still inhabited until just recently. The family was still living there. So we went to this castle just to experience that and see that. And so that was kind of cool. And of course, we found this little restaurant, Krabby Joe's. I don't know why I got my picture in front of it. Maybe I was having a bad day. Anyway, you see these beautiful old cemeteries. This is right outside the castle with the Irish crosses. But on the way to this castle, and you have to understand Sandy, she's like, of course when we moved here, we went everywhere. She reads the books, the tour guides, and so I'm sitting on the top of the big bus, the two-level bus, and she's just sitting there next to me, and she's paging through another tour book, and it's like something jumped off the page at me. I just looked over as she was thumbing through it, and there, on the pages, I saw a little ad for the Chester Beatty Library. And I just about jumped out of the bus. And the reason is because, as a geek of biblical manuscripts, in the Chester Beatty Library is the oldest existing manuscripts of the four Gospels. when I say manuscripts, like most of the book type of thing. Not all of it, but most of it. And the day before, we were 100 yards away from it. And I didn't know. It's like God said, Bill, look! I mean, I give this to the Lord. You know, I mean, it was like the lightning bolt came down. Look at the book. See it. You know, because let me tell you, as wonderful as this summer has been, if I was by the Chester Beatty Library and I didn't go see this, I would have died. So God said, Bill, look. Of course, my girls were like, okay, we know what we're doing when we get back from this little thing. Which was not easy, tons of traffic. We had to get back on the tour bus and go, and I was literally like 100 yards away from it the day before. So we got to go to the Chester Beatty Library. And you can see this is afterwards, and I have this globe. So let me kind of set this up for you. Carissa put in the little email of what brought Pastor Bill to tears. Yeah. So let me say a little bit more about this find. So Chester Beatty is a big collector of all kinds of antiquities. The library you definitely want to go to. It's got all kinds, it's not just for Christian things, it's got this one little exhibit of the Christian biblical manuscripts. I didn't see much else, so I just stayed there. But it's an amazing library. But nonetheless, these manuscripts were found in 1910. We don't know where they were found, but we assume in northern Africa. They just showed up on the marketplace. Chester Beatty bought them. As it turns out, so I'll show you, this is a part of one of the Gospels. And these date to 200 to 250 AD. There are some manuscripts, like the little Ryland fragment you've heard me talk about, a little bit of the Gospel of John, that dates to literally 100 to 150 AD. But it's just a tiny little piece. Can you see the little holes here in the middle, and then two up there and two here? The reason this is exciting is because these were a book. So, and this book included Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts, and most of the letters of Paul. So the first thing that's so cool about this, and why I want to tell you about it, is because it is common parlance after, well, not the Da Vinci Code writer Dan Brown didn't create this. How many of you have seen the movie? Come on, raise your hand. You don't have to be ashamed. It was a good movie. And how many of you read the book? The book's way better. The book is a page turner, man. Dan Brown is amazing. So, but most of what he has in there is absolutely false. But he makes it seem like absolute truth. One of the things it says is that the canon, your Bible, was formed in the Council of Nicaea. No, it wasn't. It's the Council of Carthage, which is about 395, even later than the Council of Nicaea. So and it pictures in the movie, you remember it, a bunch of old men deciding what Gospels were in and what Gospels were out, right? And all these wonderful, important Gnostic Gospels, as we call them, were unfairly cast out, and so there's like a conspiracy. Well, this papyrus found in 1910, which a lot of which is there's some in Michigan, by the way, if you ever go to Michigan. That's where I'm going. Dates to 200 to 250 AD. Close to 200 years before when the church finalized, like said, okay, these are the books. The point is, the church had already agreed that the authoritative Gospels were Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. And then the book of Acts is the second volume of Luke, which it certainly is. It shows definitively that these books had been collected and put together as a unit. And most of the Pauline corpus of writings. So I stood in front of this portion of the Gospels, and you can see, so this is a page, and this is a page, and of course it's, over time, is lost, so it would fold up this way. Of the oldest book of our New Testament in existence. And that's where I wasn't crying yet. Wait, it's better, because I'm a geek, okay, when it comes to this stuff. And of course my family was just so excited because I was like going crazy, and so then I went over next to the display next to it. And in the display next to it is a portion of Paul's letter to the Philippians, the 2nd chapter. First, like most of a big portion of the 2nd chapter. And it occurred to me, because I know what the 2nd chapter of Philippians is. I had this idea. So I got Katie and oh, by the way, you're not supposed to take pictures, but I learned that 10 minutes after I was there. A little guy came out from nowhere. Excuse me, sir, you cannot take pictures. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I just ran right from the part, right here. I didn't know. So I said, I've got this idea. So we kind of said a little prayer. I brought Katie and Becca and Sandy over, and we stood in front of this manuscript, the oldest existing papyrus writing of Philippians. Pretty sure that's correct. And I said, now, the cool thing about what you're looking at is not only that it's the oldest piece of paper of one of Paul's letters and of Philippians, but you know what the 2nd chapter of Philippians says? And you know what it is? Remember this section where Paul says, have this mind in yourself that is in Christ Jesus, that even though he was equal to God, didn't count that equality as something to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking on the form of a servant? Well, most biblical scholars, in fact, if you look it up in your New Revised Standard Version, I don't know if it's this way in the NIV, you'll see that when he starts launching into those verses, it's in poetry form. It's not in like prose block form, it's in poetry. That tells you that most biblical scholars, when they read this in Greek, it wasn't this way here because they didn't have room, and I mean, they didn't even have space between words. It is too vital, too expensive. So you've got to know where the word stops, and they only use capital letters and all this, no punctuation. Anyway, so when you read it in Greek, you go, wow, this is poetry. Most biblical scholars believe that is one of the most ancient creeds of the church, or a hymn that Paul takes and drops it into his letter. So I stood before my girls. I said, come over here. And I got my Bible out. And I said, you're looking at the oldest existing papyrus of Paul's letter to Philippians, where he quotes probably the oldest Christian hymn that we know about. And that's when I started to cry. Started right out. Sorry. And yes, the girls were right there with me. And then they said, okay, we're going to go, Dad. So that was totally awesome. And it was like God said, Bill, I mean, this was divine intervention if there ever was. I believe in God. The Chester Beatty Library. So anyway, that was awesome. So that's what we did the 2nd day of the afternoon, and did some other things. Obviously, this is hugely important. I want you to depend and have confidence in your scriptures. This is God's Word, and it wasn't made up 400 years after Jesus, lived. And this is an amazing find. 1910. Didn't happen until then. So it's pretty amazing. Yeah. So how will this trip affect me? The Sheffield part, we've kind of already talked about, but the passion for sharing Christ, the importance of prayer and study. I thought I prayed, but I was like, wow, okay, I get it now. And the essential nature of being in prayer. After the natural church development, we saw that we need more passionate spirituality here. We came back and had an emphasis on prayer for a year, and I kind of think we just need to go back to having that all the time. We have our prayer chain email, but I'm thinking we should get a whole group of people to be praying all the time for our congregation. And I just really have kind of come to know the importance of prayer anew from that visit. I saw their lead pastor, and he's the big picture guy. He sets the vision. he sets a lot of the inspiration, this is where we can go, and then other folks are more on the grassroots, and that was interesting. We're doing a lot of talk right now about what the role of me is, and other pastors and staff, and after our consultant that came. The total outward focus of all their conversations. All of their goals had something to do with reaching out, which was, really interesting to me. So, and we're doing a few, kind of trying to incorporate a few things. You can never just take and put in. Every context is different, and that would be a disaster. But there's lots of things I've learned in that regard. So, we've got 10 minutes for some questions. I think Willow Creek, I don't want to take too much time on this. In fact, let me just tell you about it, and then we can get to your questions, whether it be about Ireland or England. The Willow Creek Global Leadership Conference is in like 120 countries, hundreds of sites in the United States, and so we went to Tacoma, and it's kind of, broadcast to each place. Bill Hybels, Willow Creek, one of the largest churches in the country, puts this on every year. I learned a lot from this conference. I mean, there's, as a Lutheran pastor, there's always a lot of translating I have to do, because theologically, but learned a lot about leadership. And the big challenge this one speaker spoke about is, and he's from the Covey group, so if you're familiar with them, about the challenge of the whirlwind and then what he called wildly important goals. And this named for me the struggle as a pastor, all my ministry. But I'm coming back trying to rethink, how can I work here? And here's the tension. You've got the whirlwind. And this is true of any job, right? What are the things you have to do every day that are absolutely important? Like for me, pastoral care stuff. This happened to this person. They need a pastor. I go. I get to teach classes. I get to preach. And there's all kinds of things in the whirlwind. Then there's support for the leaders of the congregation and their administration. I don't want to leave them out there all by themselves. And that's been a really important thing I think I've done. Our leaders have had good experiences. My goal was that our president and vice president, they're going to have good experiences while I'm here. They are not going to burn out like it's happened in the past. And I'm going to support them as much as I can. I'm not going to do their job, but I'm going to support them. And they've appreciated that. Those are all parts of the whirlwind. I mean, you get just swept up and things happen, right? But then you have your goals. Like one of mine is to do more training of lay people, equipping more leaders in this congregation, launching them, getting them excited. When we get to Ethiopia next week, this is not a movement of the pastors. These are lay people who are growing the church by millions of people. How can I support, launch, get other leaders activated, even more than what this congregation has already? But the challenge is to get to those wildly important goals when you're dealing with the whirlwind. You get it? And that's something we all are challenged with, right? But it's something that, I've struggled with as a pastor. Because it's probably easier for me to do it than to train someone else to do it. And there's some things I need to do as a pastor. We're a Lutheran church. I'm Word and Sacrament, as your other pastors are. But that's just something I'm wrestling with and I want to hopefully get to. And there's theories of execution, and I'm trying to put those into place so I don't let the whirlwind keep me from the wildly important goals. Obviously the importance of leadership. Our world and country is in need of leadership right now, and it's so true of the church. And I came away thinking, wow, the responsibility that you have given to me as calling me as your lead pastor, I just came away, this is really important. And I'm just in awe of that. So I want to be a good steward of that. And yes, I have to say, I am going to be a little bit of a thorn in your side, and you can be a thorn in my side. I would much prefer I love to preach, I love to teach. Pastoral care is extremely meaningful to me, and I'd be fine just staying right where we're at. We're doing better than you know, 80%, 90% of the other Lutheran churches, you know, but I come back from the sabbatical with the sense that, you know, part of my job for you, my calling, is to say, should we stay comfortable? Or should we be open to stepping out? What would that mean? I continue to say, and it scares me just as much as you, but when I talk about worshiping 500 a Sunday, universal, people freak out. Talked about the mandate, talked about my folks that counsel me. It makes folks nervous. We're not just about numbers, Pastor Bill. I know it's not about numbers. But if there's 500 people worshiping here instead of 375 a Sunday, that means that we're touching more people with the gospel, right? That's what I want. But talking about numbers is scary, right? Because we think, oh, I'll lose my congregation. It won't be the same. There's all kinds of fears that come up. And they're appropriate and good. And John Wimberly, our consultant, got us started in thinking about that. And I've got great counsel to not go too fast. Somebody, I think it was Ann told me when she saw me walking up a couple weeks ago, she said, wow, you look like you got a lot. She said, Rome was not conquered in a day. And that's been a little of my problem. So I'm going to take my time. We're going to plan. We're going to do strategic planning and see where the Lord takes us. Anyway, that's the Global Leadership Conference. Let me stop and let you ask questions now. And then Ethiopia next week. You don't want to miss that. Okay, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to state one more thing. Most people see the Celtic crosses and don't realize that they were originally brightly painted in reds and whites and yellows, and they were the equivalent of those pictures behind the altar in Germany.
That's excellent. And you know, that's true of the ancient, or even more ancient world of Jerusalem. You know, everything's in black and white because it's lost its color, but they used yellows and reds and all kinds of color.
Yeah, the other thing, you saw the size of that castle you visited?
Yeah.
That was in the transition from war castles to homes, and that's, a man's home is his castle, is where that comes from.
Oh, wow. That's cool, Kevin. You just reminded me of another one. In the parlor, I didn't put this picture up there, there was this big square-like thing, and evidently the servant back in those days, the gals would wear makeup that actually would like melt. I guess it had wax in it or something. And so you, there's this big thing, and the servant would stay there and fan the women because their face would... Yeah. Now, this is what the tour guide said. Did you hear? You know where the term "saving face" comes from? That's what she said. I believe it. You know, no, thank you, Kevin. That's great. Always your castle. Good. Good. Other questions about anything from the England, Ireland deal? So, yeah. Please, in the back, Sue. Yeah. And then our Dave, you got that one. Sue, why don't you come here? Joyce, do you have a question? Yeah, please. Okay.
I was so interested in the Paul Philippians letter.
Yes.
Thanks to my daughter's college religion teacher, she no longer has faith.
Ah, there you go.
I just want to get it clear in my mind. Is that a copy of his original letter that someone copied, or is that his original letter?
It would definitely be a copy. Most likely, yes. Okay. But here's the...
But it's copied exactly.
Well, some people will debate that. But when I look at the amazing... A lot of people say, look at how different the manuscripts are. But when you look at it overall, and you look at how similar they are, I think you can be very confident that that's awful close, if not the exact letter that Paul wrote. Here's the thing that, as an apologetic, you need to know when you run into people that say, what, the Bible's not dependable, right? Then you have to say, then you also don't believe that Plato or Aristotle wrote what we have. Because we have, the oldest of Greek manuscripts of their writings is only like 500 years old or 600 years old from now. So we have... If you're going to doubt the Bible's dependability because of textual support, then you have to basically throw in the towel on all antiquity. Because no piece of literature has more textual support than the New Testament and Old Testament. Not even close. I mean, I think how many copies of most ancient do we have of Aristotle and Plato? It's like 4 or 5. Don't quote me on that. I mean, it's like a handful. We have hundreds of biblical manuscripts. And then we have many, many that go back to the 3rd and 4th century. Probably the reason why we don't have more is because, which was the Roman emperor that did that horrible persecution? Diocletian? Yes, thank you, Mike. Tried to destroy the Christian faith. So many of the biblical manuscripts surely would have been destroyed in that case. And that's probably why we don't have even more. But, so yeah, it's not probably the original, although technically it could have been. But again, very close as far as getting back to the source when you're within 100 or 200 years. And then we also look at how these people believed this was the sacred Word of God. And so they didn't just say, oh, I'm kind of tired, let me translate this. Let me just, they painstakingly reproduce these documents. The other thing that Kenneth Bailey makes a really good point is that people in the Middle East and in this time, they told stories, and if you told them wrong, the community would correct you. It's still today that way. Like, I like to change stories about my family and make me look good, but they remind me, no, it didn't happen that way, Dad. You were really afraid of the raccoon when we were camping, or whatever. So, I've tried to revise it. Well, that's the way it was in the ancient times, and if you didn't do it right, the community just would not accept that. Either orally in the way you told the story, or in the writings. I think Kenneth Bailey makes a great point. But yes, I'm sorry about your daughter. Many of our kids have gone off to universities and to our church schools as well. And they've, the Bible's just a human document that a bunch of people produced, such and such. And I just think that's a way oversimplification. I don't think it's factual. But if you are going to go there, what I would say to your daughter is say, well, then you don't believe in any of it, right? You don't believe in Plato, Aristotle. That was all made up too, because if you compare the support, it's not even in the ballpark. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. Yeah. But no, for sure, we know for sure carbon dating, that manuscript is 200 to 250 AD. And also they wrote in a specific way. In each, we see where the style of writing changes, and we know that was the style of writing of 100 to 250 BC of Greek. So it's a great question. I'd love to talk about that stuff. Yes, yeah.
My question is this on?
It
Yes.
is. Just go close. Just go close.
The Alpha program.
Yes.
In that church in Sheffield.
Yes.
I was curious about how you get people into the church that don't know anything about the church.
Yeah.
And how would we go about that in these widely important
Yes.
roles?
The way it works in the Alpha program is through relationships, and you invite people with this. Just come and listen. There's no commitment. There's nobody pushing. Just come, and this is what the Christian faith is. And so it's a vehicle specifically designed, and the way it works is people invite people they know. And so those students say to their friends, hey, just come and listen, we're going to make dinner, you get to listen to DVD, you can say this is bunk, you can say, no commitment, and that's the way they come at this particular one. So it is by invitation. I think they probably publicize stuff, like if you want to find out the Christian faith, but most of it is, from my understanding, personal invitation. Yes. Mike? Yep.
Lee Strobel's books are awfully helpful too.
Those books are very helpful for apologetics and helping people that have doubts, questions. Yeah, very good. Anything else? I know we're out of time. So next week, thank you so much. I'm so excited to share this with you. Oh, one more, please.
I was just going to say, Sheffield has become popular in the news this week because we've been watching the Ryder Cup, one of the young European players is from Sheffield.
Oh, I didn't know that. How about that? Well, I hope he doesn't do well today. No, I'm just kidding. Very cool. Thank you. All right, so next week, we travel to Ethiopia. We get to meet the Mekane Jesus Church, the Lutheran church there. I have lots of pictures and video even. So we'll see you next week. Go in peace. Serve the Lord.
Thank you.